The agenda this week assessed whether the post-pandemic workplace needs fewer managers, celebrated Black joy, and explored pandemic effects on body image. The agenda's week in review begins with what's needed to end the Ottawa occupation and the international dimensions of those protests.
I wonder if one of the things that we've learned from both January 6th of last year in the United States and now in Ottawa is that a very small handful of people can actually apparently give the impression that democracies are being brought down to their knees and are incapable of making decisions. Do you think that's a takeaway from all this?
Yeah, here's the trap, Steve, for governments. It's no win, right? If you respond in a very measured way and you continuously increase the pressure, and we haven't really seen much of that, frankly, over the last 2 weeks. It's been very, very slow, as we've all said. The goal is to split apart the different groups that Matt described. And you saw it happen over the Ambassador Bridge over these last 2 days. Yes, with threats of arrest and fines, yet a lot of people just left. And then when the police line formed, more people just left. So by the time the final round happened, there was just a small handful of really committed people that were still there, and that was just easier to manage. That's got to be the strategy every time. The reason it's a no-win is if you escalate too quickly, you actually radicalize some of the people. And there's long-term consequences from that, especially in an age of social media. If you respond too slowly, you get weak and effectual government. This is a crisis of authority. The civil power is broken down. So you're looking for a very narrow sweet spot here. Ultimately, all levels of government are going to take back those streets. We're not going to be living with this. There really is not much of a threat to the civil power if we're honest about this. The real issue with the bridge, that really got people going in Ottawa last week. That one's resolved already. In Alberta, the traffic is going. It's just one lane. That's frustrating. So let's keep a sense of perspective here and use the instruments that we have. It's just really tough on elected officials, this kind of moment. And you have to give the Prime Minister and the Cabinet credit. They did not resort in a visceral way to the strongest set of instruments that they have. I think in hindsight, Steve, just as with the FLQ crisis in Montreal, a more measured response would have been better. We'll look back at this and we'll say roughly, I acknowledge how slow and frustrating this has been, but roughly they're in the right zone.
We got a minute left here. Let me give 30 seconds to Matt and then 30 seconds to Stephanie on the apparent paper tigerish look of some of our governments right now who seem to be incapable of doing what many people think is required in order to show that democracies can cope with situations like this. Matt, go ahead.
I'll pick up on what Janice was saying about having that kind of the Ambassador Bridge, right? The slow peeling away of the different groups, the slow, literally slow advance of the lines of police in to kind of disperse people. You can have slow action on the ground at the tactical level, but I think you need swift and decisive action at the strategic level to get those guys doing those slow de-escalating actions a lot faster. You shouldn't wait weeks to initiate your slow action. You should have your slow action going in very quickly. Still calm, still rational, still trying to keep things under control, but you don't let it fester for weeks, because if there is a threat to the authority of the state, it's the appearance of weakness more than weakness itself.
Last 30 to Stephanie.
Yeah, it's been deeply frustrating. We are invoking the Emergencies Act, but, we have criminal statutes that can give people 10 years for just engaging in criminal mischief. It'll be really interesting to see how this plays out, if this is kind of a symbolic tool by the federal government to look like it is doing something in an age when we are all kind of screaming, do something to respond. But it'll be interesting in the coming days to see how the movement itself responds to this. And, I guess what I'm going to be looking for in really the coming months is the conversations we're going to have around policing's emergencies, and how we actually respond to a threat that really doesn't seem to have a name other than subversion or possibly sedition.
Why do you think that this has become a tried and true template for protesting that we're seeing repeated, in France and in Australia?
Well, social movements oftentimes have what we refer to as a repertoire of struggle. And the occupation style struggle, that goes back a long ways. You could go all the way back to 1871 and look at the Paris Commune as an example of this. So occupying a physical space is highly effective in terms of being able to raise awareness about the existence of your grievances, but also to meet other people that you might not be aware of until you actually get together. So in a way, what's happening in Ottawa is kind of like a convention for right-wing populism right now. It's in a way like a meet and greet for people to find each other under this sort of banner of freedom and this right to be left alone and this sort of weariness with pandemic restrictions, et cetera.
Michael, I'm curious, because you're in the thick of it, this is, if you look at the numbers, it's quite a small crowd of people occupying Ottawa right now. Does that play into it as well when we look at the numbers and how easily that could be sort of copied in other countries?
Well, absolutely. It is a Canadian-style protest. We need to own it. Part of the reason we've had this trouble is that we have thought of it as something that could never happen in Canada. It is a divided population on many questions. When people are able to organize under one banner, in this case, COVID-19 restrictions, you bring together all manner of strange bedfellows. They don't need to be well coordinated. They can arrive in small number with heavy machineries and wreak havoc on the city. And then it attracts a life of its own, like a critical mass. On weekends, you have throngs of casual protesters breezing into town in up to 10,000 at any given moment on the weekend. And then it compresses back down to a very small number of hardcore protesters, around 400 during the business hours of the week. This is a very efficient, extremely disruptive strategy that, of course, people with an interest in pushing an agenda around the planet will capitalize on and attempt to replicate.
Michael, the chief of police in your city just resigned over this. Why does it seem police can't get a handle on this situation? You talk about the numbers, you talk about the disruption, and there's plenty of warning.
The police were very much on the back foot, again, in terms of underestimating the threat that was on the way, the disruptive threat. Number two, very much on the back foot because where they have been aggressive in the past, G20 in Toronto about 11 years ago, they reaped all kinds of trouble. They were sued by citizens. They paid out tens of millions of dollars to citizens that had been deemed to be wrongly treated by the courts. They were on the back foot. They thought, okay, everybody's asked us to contain protests, let people have their right to free speech, just mitigate the worst of the damage. Unfortunately, that allowed things to bed in. And once you've got those tons of truck machinery bedded down in the center part of town, very difficult to move if you've got a protest whose objective it is to stay for as long as possible. They weren't here just to make a point and leave town.
Anya, I want to come to you. You've obviously done a lot of research on this group. I'm curious, how would you describe who makes up this movement?
Yeah, there's a real kind of diversity, I think, present. And I think the fact that they are kind of occupying the space for a long period of time allows them to attract a wide variety from people who have legitimate kind of personal and political grievances against lockdown measures or perhaps against COVID itself. Obviously, many people have lost a lot over the course of this pandemic. Those people, I think, come out on weekends, but as my fellow panelists have spoken about, there are also the more kind of entrenched folks who perhaps represent more fringe ideologies, more right-wing ideologies. And so we're really seeing a mix of people who are harnessing this movement for kind of other agendas, and then people who really are just looking to express, some of the pain of the last few years.
Even more than the sheer number of managers, it's their positioning that is often dysfunctional in organizations. We have companies in Canada and in the US that are large, and so they justify a certain number of managers, but they tend to be arranged vertically. So you have companies that have 10, 12, 14 layers of hierarchy. That means that what managers do on a day-to-day basis is seek approval up and down this vertical line of authority. And that means endless meetings, the necessity to, navigate all these levels and all these lines of reporting. You can imagine repositioning these managers more horizontally, where an organization creates parts of the work of the company that are more decentralized, more independent, and where you still need managerial oversight and guidance, but it is arranged more along horizontal lines instead of being stacked up vertically.
Okay,
This
more on
kind
that.
of redistribution would improve dramatically the use of the managerial ranks that exist.
Understood. More on that to come. Dave Ulrich, how about you? Are there too many managers out there?
I think it's the wrong question. You know, the clothes that we wear, the headsets we have, the books that we have, everything we eat, our lives are given to us by an organization. How do you build an organization that takes individual competencies and creates an organizational capability? Management is one way to do that. It's not the only way. If you replace management, you've got to find other ways to make sure that that organization delivers value. So for me, the question is, how do you create a governance system so that the organization accomplishes its purpose? It could be through incentives, pay. It could be through bureaucracy, which is the argument that Michaela and Gary Hamel have made brilliantly, or it could be through shared values. But the issue is not how many managers do we have. The issue is how do you create an organization that makes sure that those books that Tatiana publishes get published? And how do you create an organization that makes sure that Steve's show stays on the air? That's the question I'm interested in.
That's a question I'm interested in too. No, never mind. We're going to move on from that. Dan Bresnitz, your take on whether we have, with apologies to Dave, I'm going to ask the question again, too many managers out there.
Again, I actually have to agree with Dave. I'm not sure that we have too many managers out there. I think that what Tatiana and Michaela have described is correct. We currently have too many layers of management, which the only thing that they do is managing the manager, that managing the manager.
How do we manage without managers? So because the work of managing, of getting things done, as Dave mentioned, efficiently at scale is important. That will never go away. But can we imagine organizations that can do that? And be less hierarchical, be less managerially focused, and filled with managers who are not adding a ton of value, and probably not very happy in playing that role, right? So, and we think that the answer is yes, and we arrived at those estimates that you mentioned by looking at organizations that are able to be capable, much more efficient, much more innovative, with a fraction of the managerial footprint of traditionally managed companies. So Tiziana mentioned, large firms with 12 layers of management. Some of the companies that we've researched, and perhaps we can get into some of them later, but like, for instance, Haier, which is the largest appliance maker in the world, or Buurtzorg, which is the largest provider of home health services in the Netherlands, they manage workforces of tens of thousands of people with 2 layers of management, not 12.
I think that Black Joy allows for Black people to really be in their element, whatever that looks like to them, whatever that sounds like, really getting to know their inner self and getting to express themselves however they choose in order to create things that the public can enjoy and that other people can learn from.
Alexandra, what would you add to that?
I would add that Black Joy exists in the smallest moments and the biggest movements. Black Joy is a response to oppression, and it is something that we as Black people hold sacred, and we can share it with strangers, we can share it with family members, Black joy is sort of our life's blood.
Rochelle.
Sure, absolutely. I love what everyone has said so far. Black joy is really understanding where you're from, understanding your history, but living in your present and looking forward to the future as well, and enjoying all the diversity that Black joy has, Black culture. It's not a monolith, though, and a lot of joy comes from different things, and then really relishing and loving who you are and how you experience all the different and beautiful elements of Black culture.
Rochelle, let me do a quick follow-up with you, because part of your answer said looking forward to the future. And obviously a lot of what has transpired, particularly over the last few years, has been miserable and unhappy and difficult, and none of it has sort of pointed to looking forward to a more optimistic and positive future. At least you can interpret it that way. So again, talk to us about the importance of looking forward to a better future and how that works into all of this.
Sure. I mean, after everything that's happened, after really the world woke up to what Black people have been experiencing for generations, so much has changed, I think. I mean, there's way more that to be done, but organizations are looking at policies. They're looking at things through an equity lens. There have been some movement in trying to, help, I guess, even the playing field. And so looking forward to the future for me is really looking at how we can evolve and develop and bring Black joy into our lives. And yes, acknowledge the trauma, but really get out of that situation.
All right, Alexandra, let's look at some of your contribution to this issue, and that is, I want to talk about a play you did called Finding Black Joy, which people can watch if they go onto the Grand Theatre website. It is there through the end of February. Start us off. What's the play about?
So the I don't know if it's a play. It's this compilation of events that sort of take you from the bottom, the depths of the hardest parts of being Black, which is racism. It confronts racism in a very truth-telling way, and then moves you to this concert, which is an expression of Black joy. And you can't really get to Black joy without understanding the pressures being faced by the Black community. And so it's this wonderful truth-telling piece that involves as many Black people as I could fit into it. And yeah, it's I don't know, it's one of my greatest works.
Noelle, there are many terms out there: body positivity, size inclusivity, excuse me, body neutrality. What do they mean, and why should we be careful when choosing the right terminology?
Well, these are words that have emerged as part of a time where we're trying to say, let's get away from hunger being the enemy. Let's get away from BMI being something that we define ourselves as, or weight on the scale. Let's instead embrace these beautiful bodies that we have that can come in different sizes. When we think about body positivity, it's being positive towards the body. It's not saying, oh, I'm so bad for eating this, or I'm being good today. Since when are we a good or bad person based on the shape of our body, or based on what was on our plate or in a bowl? There's so much more. And so if we can just step back and say, let's love our body. Let's be good to our body that gets us through the day, that has just got us through a pandemic. That is a beautiful thing. Let's step away from making these restrictive choices or making someone feel poorly about themselves because of what they ate or what their body size is. And if we can move forward with this, if we can raise our next generation behind us and those behind them to have these new opinions of numbers and of the body and even of age, as David has been talking about, we can actually see an emergence of beautiful relationship with food, with hunger, with satiety, with our bodies, with our age. This can be a beautiful thing, and we can just erase the diet industry altogether as far as I'm concerned. They do not need our money anymore.
Marnie, your products, your Arna garments are size inclusive. What does that mean?
So size inclusivity means representative of the population and the customers that we serve. So for Thigh Society, we offer our chafing undergarments in a size extra small to a size 6XL. Not what you might typically see, or the stereotype of chafing being a plus size issue, where we might only offer a certain size range. And I think, back to the comments about body positive, there have been a lot of brands in the last couple of years that have wanted to sort of jump on that body positive bandwagon because it was a trending hashtag and it was really trendy to say that you were body positive. And then they would turn around and either not offer their whole size range, or not offer their whole products in the full size range, or not show body diverse models on their website and in their socials. And I think it's really important, not only from a size perspective, but from a racial perspective, from an age perspective, all the things we've been talking about. We live in a diverse society. And I think if brands want to be compelling and have their customers appreciate them and know that they're trying to do better for society overall, for all of our mental health and wellness, the more you can be inclusive in your marketing and advertising, it's just smart business. It just makes sense for the overall good of society as well.
That's just some of what we covered this week. You can find the full conversations on our website, tvo.org, our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, or our Twitter feed, twitter.com/theagenda.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.